Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to what I shall be calling in future, this particular segment anyway, the news. And I'm wearing these because I have a little bit to read, and I've made a few notes today whilst I was getting on with the housework and all that sort of stuff. And I'd just like to run through a couple of bits which are quite sort of interesting, to say the least, because what I've been noticing now is that there are some overlaps in terms of topics that are being discussed on the mainstream news outlets. Of course, the importance of keeping an eye on that, as far as I'm concerned, is that it's the narrative that most people are feeding off. And the more, for me personally, that I can better understand where people are getting information from, first of all, and secondly, what that information is, then the better I can then also understand how to align with that and then how to approach that in future. So this is not an educational video at all. I'm not here telling people how to do things. It's not an instruction manual or anything like that, but it's a good way for me to, kind of adjust myself a little bit and think of new ways and new arguments or better ways perhaps to put my arguments over, because it's something I've been discussing very recently with some friends, is that particularly when we talk about the COVID thing, I personally am of the opinion that I'm almost too many steps ahead of the ones that are sort of stuck in that mainstream way of thinking. Not because I'm cleverer than them or anything else like that, but the fact of the matter is they're still there. I've moved on to there, but I need to find a way to get back to that point where I can then re-engage, because clearly, just basic things like being unaware of what the PCR test is, for example, is something that surprised me. That happened very recently to me. Anyway, so what I've done is I've had a little look today at various news outlets, including RT, including BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, Sky, one or two radio stations as well. And I've had a little glimpse in the so-called newspapers, what used to be Fleet Street, just to kind of get a general view of what's being discussed at the moment. And there were three things in particular that sprang to mind. Of course, the COVID thing is the ongoing scenario that's happening at the moment, and that, as far as I can see, will fluctuate up and down as time goes on. So you'll have little lulls, and then you'll have a peak of panic making news, and then it will go into a little bit of a lull, and then it will explode again, and this will happen and that will happen, and it just got to go like that now, as far as I can see, for the foreseeable future. But there are a couple of other things that are picking up traction at the moment that I've noticed, and I've made a note, like I said. One of them, of course, is our favourite old friend, Brexit. I'll go in alphabetical order here. And the other one, of course, is global warming. The word global in that one already tells you it's a scam. That's another topic, and I shall be doing videos in future talking about that. So I'm going to just have I'm just going to briefly just go through very quickly what I heard today, what I read today, and all the rest of it. And I've also got a German and French take on this as well. But without boring anybody to tears, excuse the pun, today Brexit is 4 days away from being finalised, and the flip from being an ultra controlled country who's lost all its sovereignty and everything else, blah, blah, blah. In 4 days' time, we're going to be free as a bird in the UK, and we're all going to be in charge of our own destiny, and we're all going to be able to do all sorts of things and fulfill our dreams, and etc., and all that nonsense that has been propagated now for years. So what's happened is today there have been, 27 EU states have unanimously backed the trade and security deal. Now, I'm not going to go into detail as to what those deals entail. They are for all to see. If you go onto the relevant website, you can go into the European Union stuff and have a look at that. There's so much information in it. Half of it is not even worth reading, to be absolutely honest. It's like reading the Great Reset. You know what I mean? It's yeah. Anyway, so that has been finalised pretty much, and what is being suggested, of course, in many areas of the community even, is that, you know, this is Britain's first opportunity at going it their own way. Now, one thing that people have to understand here, and that is that all nations on ground level appear to be separate nations, right? That's our level. That's the level that we work on, you know. So we have countries and all that sort of stuff. But when you go above the levels, you hit politics. And when you go above politics, you go to banking systems and all that sort of stuff, and institutions and blah, 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 you'll find that they're all pretty much run and handled and owned, if you like, by the same entities. I'll call them that for want of a better word. And what I don't mean reptilian or not reptilian. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't know who the ones in charge are, but they're certainly not the ones we're told they are, right? If I use a flat earth analogy, for example, I certainly don't know what the shape of the earth is that we're living on, but I can most definitely tell you what we're not living on. And if anybody would like those questions answered, by the way, feel free to ask me. I've got plenty of answers to that. So the Brexit thing for me personally has been now for years a pure distraction topic. And it's something that riles the Brits always, because the Brits have always been taught at schools, certainly when I went to school anyway, that we were always a special nation and we always had to do it ourselves and go it alone and this, that and the other, and you know, we're an island nation and with this plethora of tradition, and we have the cradle of democracy that is Parliament, we have the greatest authors and the greatest this, greatest that, greatest the other, and we've invented the universe and all that sort of nonsense, right? So, of course, that feeds into the patriotism and all that sort of stuff that we Brits tend to thrive on. Well, I don't anymore. I used to buy into all of that, but that has gone in the last few years pretty much totally. I see it from a totally different angle now, and thank goodness I do, because now that I know it from a different angle, I couldn't look at it from that angle anymore ever again. I couldn't go back to that. So anyway, that was one thing that was making the headlines today in a lot of the papers, and of course in the various news outlets on television. The other one, of course, that was making the headlines today and has been now for a few days, is, I mean, if you were to create like a instead of a Eurovision Song Contest, you could call it a Nonsense Vision Song Contest, then this next one would probably battle it out for top spot in terms of who would win the Nonsense Vision Award, because this one is called Global Warming. And global warming has kind of, it's sort of followed us a little bit like, like the wind, really. It's been around since I've been at school, that ice shelves are falling into the ocean, and that, we have too much carbon dioxide floating around, which of course is bad for us, and blah, blah, blah. Of course, if you fail to mention the fact that plants need carbon dioxide to then photosynthesize and then spit out oxygen, which is what we need to live, and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, but what was interesting today was that there was a thing called Atlas that I'd not heard of. And what it is, it consists of a transatlantic assessment and deep water study. So it's something that has been, I'm just looking down at my notes, so sorry if you're going to see the top of my head every now and then, but it's something that was part of the Atlantic Action Plan that started in 2013, which is quite interesting. And I had a little look on their website, and they talk about, in terms of objectives, is to advance our understanding of deep Atlantic marine ecosystems and populations, and to enhance monitoring methods, modeling, and also predictions. And of course, they'll use certain simulations for that and certain software and all the rest of it to be able to then carry out studies or whatever and look into the future for future scenarios in terms of life forms on the surface or on the the bottom of the oceans, right? Of course, they pulled out the old chestnut today about, we know less about the floor of the ocean than we do of the surface of the moon and the surface of Mars. Well, there's a reason for that, which I won't go into now. But you ain't going to know much about the surface of Mars or the surface of the moon, because you'd have to go there first in order to know anything. And you've got it, kids. We never have, and we never will. Again, I'll do a show on that another time. So it was quite interesting when I was hearing about this, because they have now found out that newly discovered species are already or could already be under threat through global warming. So what they've done is they've basically gone down to the bottom of the ocean in the Atlantic. They've used robots to do that, of course. They've scurried around, found new species. They found 12 new species, which is quite interesting. And 12 in 7 years, that's pretty bad going, isn't it? What's that? It's not even 2 a year. But anyway, excuse me. And of course, what they've also said was the reason why they know that global warming is affecting these new species is because when they observe and analyze the skeletons of these new species, and again, I'm reading my notes, so apologies for that. I don't have the cue in front of me. The skeletons are becoming more porous, which would indicate that the waters are becoming more acidic, the oceans that is. And so, of course, the higher raising of acid in the ocean water would indicate higher rates of pollution and, in effect, global warming or whatever. Now, I don't know about you, but the Atlantic's a pretty big old ocean. So I'm a little bit confused as to how you could make such accurate assessments, especially when you're suggesting that we know less about the floor of the ocean than we do of the moon, where we've allegedly been. We haven't. And Mars, where we're allegedly going. We're not. But there we go. And of course, to round it all off, they said that polar, notice the narrative, polar regions are particularly endangered. Polar would suggest we have poles, north and south, which suggests we live on a spinning water ball in a vacuum of space. Now, again, it's creating, or it's for me, this is the way I'm seeing it, it's solidifying this notion that A, we live on a globe, B, that there is global warming, C, that we've been actively looking all the time for many, many years, and there's no disputing it, blah, blah, blah. So it's just reaffirming. So it's creating a presupposed position whereby there's no going back to it anymore. You can't re-argue that point because it's done and dusted. And that's why I'm raising these points right now, because it fits in nicely with the whole COVID nonsense that we've been talking about. That, COVID-19 has become a thing, and wearing face masks has become a norm, and considering taking vaccinations is so normal that actually you not taking them in the near future will make you abnormal and basically force you into the fringes of society. The same goes with this if you think outside of that parameter or those parameters that are set by the mainstream. which has been my argument the whole time, the the whole way, along the whole way, because it's the reinforcing of these indoctrinations that are the disturbing bit for me. And the way they do it is the way they've always done it, and that is mainstream media, of course, backed up by education systems, and of course, school curriculum and all that sort of stuff. As you can see, a lot of work to be done, and where to start? Question mark. So, so as we're talking about COVID, of course, which is the topic at the moment that is occupying us most of all. Today came the announcement that there has been a sharp rise, or in fact the word they used was surge, in COVID-19. And today the word, I've forgotten the lady's name now, my note taking was a bit off key today, but one of the ladies who I've never seen before in front of the camera, she seems to be the new kid on the block in terms of pushing out this, spewing out this concoction of poison in a verbal form. She is suggesting that over the Christmas period it has been wall-to-wall, I quote, wall-to-wall COVID, due to the new variant. Now this is the new narrative now. This is it now. The new variant, right? 9/11, Bin Laden. Okay. Same thing, what better enemy to have than one that you can't see? I'll pluck another one out of the air. War on Terror. There's another great one. Anyway, so due to the new variant, and they have now called, some of these experts have called for a new nationwide lockdown / tier 4 ASAP. Now, while they're calling for all of that from the comfort of their own mansion houses somewhere in the countryside, probably not even in the UK, they've also stressed the importance of households not mixing, okay, which is of course a return to the old narrative that we had in February and March before the first major lockdown. Basically what they're doing with that narrative is, of course, they're putting the onus and the blame already on us, the people, because what they're saying is this is only a thing and it only remains to be a thing due to your behaviours. And if you guys don't, change your behaviours and don't do what we say, then you're the bad guys if we have to keep prolonging this misery, etc., etc., etc. And it's been a narrative now pretty much the whole year. So we've also been told today that 100 million more vaccinations, or vaccines I should say, are on order. 100 million. Now we have 67 million, I think, roughly, citizens in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. About 1/5 of the population in the US. Still a handy population. So that's a lot of vaccines to order. And that is adding to the vaccines we've already ordered that we've been having transported, which I've said in a previous video called Ponderings, which we've already had transported from Belgium, and they've been placed into secure areas and refrigeration, silos or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, and this of course is all down to the fact that hospitals now face immense pressure as cases rise due to this new variant, of course, that I've just mentioned. But this is the kicker that particularly affects children now. I know us within the community, I say community, those of us who are in constant contact with each other and talk about this topic and have gone on demos and things like that, and are always looking at new information, or the latest, let's say, not necessarily new, just the latest information. We are aware that the children are now being targeted, and this is a ramping up of a perversion and sinisterisms that are starting to get to a point whereby I mean, it wasn't a laughing matter before, but this really puts the cat amongst the pigeons now. And it was good because a friend of mine put up a video recently about our local MP, well, my local MP actually here in Bournemouth East. I keep forgetting his name because he's so insignificant to me, to be honest with you. But anyway, Tobias, or Tobias, if you want to anglicise his German Christian name, Elwood, who has been making waves now talking about how, the children need to be vaccinated, basically, is what he's saying. And he wants to use the military to push that through, is also basically what he's saying. Now, I didn't know this until I did a little bit of research on him, but he was actually a minister for the Ministry of Defence from 2017 until 2019. So he has friends in military places. I mean, they all do, because they all swap around departments anyway on their way up the ladder within the political circles. That's how it works. I mean, none of them really are an expert in any of the positions that they, or the roles that they carry out. I mean, the treasurer is not a finance expert. He's got economists doing that work for him. The foreign secretary, I guarantee you, if I gave him a list of 20 countries and asked him to name all the capital cities, wouldn't have a bloody clue. He might name 5 of 20, right? So the point I'm making is they're not experts in their own particular field, but they're put into each single field, gain a bit of experience, feathers in the cap, to then progress up the ladder. And that's how that works within politics. I mean, it's a circle of bullshit, basically. It really is. And that's no laugh. I'm not leading. It's no laughing matter, but it is in a way. And I've spoken to some of these buffoons. I've been down there when I used to do politics in school. We used to have day trips down to Parliament. And we spoke to some of these people. And, after half an hour, it became pretty clear pretty quickly why those people were entering that realm, as it were. And, cheap you buy, cheap you get. But anyway, so just talking about that, and they were also talking today about the rapid testing systems that they want to be introducing into schools, which again is something that's very disturbing, because especially when they're starting to talk about children being allowed to make the decision without the consent of their parents. Now, this is happening elsewhere, because I know it's happening in Germany, because my daughter lives in Germany, and I also have family who live in Germany, and I talk to them very regularly. And, my daughter already has to wear a face mask at school, and she's 10. And I've said this before. Why? Even if you believed in this nonsense, which is exactly what it is, but even if you did, let's just say you weren't taking your vitamins for 5 days and you literally started hallucinating and thinking, oh, this could actually be a thing, you still wouldn't put a face mask on a 10-year-old kid, because A, she wouldn't be a danger to anybody, and B, nobody could endanger her. She's out of the danger zone in every way, shape or form possible. Age group, all that sort of stuff. So what are they playing at? And for me it's frustrating, because I live in the UK, of course, and I don't have any legal standing towards my daughter, because she lives in Germany and comes under German jurisdiction. So there isn't really much I can do apart from hope that her mother sees eye to eye with me and kind of smells the coffee, as it were. But even here where I work at the football ground, I mentioned this story to a couple of friends recently. I was working there, and a radio call came through, and somebody in the control box was asked by one of the stewards, we have a parent here who wants to enter the ground with their child. Does the child have to wear a face mask, yes or no? And we waited a couple of minutes. We could all hear, because you can hear each other's conversations all the time in your earpiece. And then the response came from the control box that from the age of 11, yes, they do. Now, again, why? I know why they think why, but even why they think why doesn't make sense. Why do they think why that makes sense? Even in the worst case scenario, it's nonsense. It just baffles the brain. Like I said on an earlier video, bullshit baffles brains, and this is a classic example. It's nuts. Anyway, right, so I'm going on a little bit about kids there, but I mean, this is the point, because that touches on an emotional nerve and everything else. And that will rile people. It's certainly riling me when I see this, that they're starting to play on kids now and using kids as a bargaining chip to win those adults that are sat on the fence over, as it were, by throwing in this thing about the new variant being particularly vicious towards children. It's just disgraceful. So whoever's decided to write this as the British part of the agenda, let's say, to push the British department of all those departments that are known as countries, is quite perverted, actually. So I thought I'd just emphasise and highlight that, because that was something that, to be frank, just pissed me off, actually. And they know it annoys people. Well, might be worth having a little chat with Mr. Elwood at some stage, maybe over a glass of Pimm's, not that I drink. Anyway, so, and then just looking at some notes here that I did earlier as well, 112,000 care home worker vacancies are up for grabs at the moment in the UK, in England alone, sorry. 112,000 vacancies in the care home industry are up for grabs in England alone at this very moment in time. Just let that sink in. Think about that. Unbelievable. And they're figures that come from the Department of Health and Care. They're not made up. So everything I'm quoting today and talking about today is all officialdom. It's not conspiracy stuff or anything like that. I'm just bringing you what I've read, what I know, what I've experienced, what I've heard directly from the horse's mouth. Right? And, when you look at those three things, then, if you're not made of strong stuff and you haven't got your spiritual fabric together and your ducks in a row, this is really going to affect you, this stuff, because you're getting hit from all angles here. To be a Brit at the moment, if you looked at this, you'd be shaking your head going, my God, how do people in that country even manage with all these thought bombs that people have to contend with on a daily basis? They're not thought bombs, really. They're nonsense. But, it affects people. You see it on a daily basis. I see it on a daily basis. I spoke to somebody today, for example, in the vape shop, because I had to get something changed for my new vape. I'm trying to stop smoking. So I thought I'd go vaping instead. Well, that's great, isn't it? Why wear shoes when you wear sandals? And he was wearing like a scarf around his nose and mouth, like he was cold, but he wasn't. He was wearing it. And I said to him, whatever you do, don't wear that for my good or anything. I'd rather you didn't. And and he sort of looked at me, and we started talking a little bit. And I said, don't watch too much television. And he came up with the classic. He said to me, oh, don't worry, I don't. I hardly watch mainstream TV at all, he said. I thought, okay. So I said, well, all right, you don't watch much television? No, I don't watch television at all. I said, well, what are you wearing that mask around your face for then? And he kind of felt a little bit sort of caught out. I didn't really mean to catch him out, but he was trying to impress me by the fact that he wasn't watching TV. So I thought I'd just ask him a straight question. Well, why are you wearing that mask? And he said to me, because I'm told to. What can you say? And that is where we're at. Because I'm told to. And this is a huge, huge problem, And I understand people have to toe the line and earn a living and all that sort of stuff. I know that. But where does the time come? When does that moment come in your life where you've got to say to yourself, right, okay, yes, I kind of back down and go along with things that I don't want to go along with. I mean, who likes paying tax, right? Or if you're a kid who likes eating their greens, great, okay, well, eating your greens will help you, paying tax doesn't, so there's the difference right there, right? But if you're going to get told that sort of thing, and you've got customers coming in saying, well, don't wear it for my benefit, and he's saying, well, I'm wearing it because I have to, because I'm told to, then there needs to be a time where you have to then seriously question that and go, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it. And ask the person who's employing you, is it mandatory to wear a face mask? Because I'm exempt from wearing a face mask, so why should I wear one at work, kind of thing. It's the same decision I have to make at the football club now as well. You know, they want all staff members to wear face masks, and yet when you finish your shift, you take them off right there. Nothing's changed. You stood in the same place you have done for the last 6 hours. When you finish your shift, you can take your face mask off. No one says anything. And they even admit that the face masks are only to be worn really for the benefit of the camera. It's nothing to do with health, right? It's an open secret. People know. The police know that they're there. The ambulance crews know. The stewards know. Us lot know, along with management and all that. Everyone knows. You know. But yet, for some reason, everyone goes along with it. It's most bizarre. So there we have it. But I'm going to end this on a light note, or lighter note. And again, it involves the plucky Brits. I heard news today that 200 British tourists, basically fled Switzerland and escaped quarantine. Can't write this stuff. What happened was they went to a skiing resort in Switzerland, and there was a rise or something like that in cases, and they were due to basically keep people for 14 days and quarantine everybody that was in the area. So, 200 of them decided to make a run for it, over the hills and far away, as it were. But it was funny because today the BBC interviewer spoke to the Swiss tourism representative or whatever, and it was funny because the BBC guy was trying his best to really scandalise the topic and almost turn it into a possible catalyst for a further wave of problems because of 200 Brits managed to escape an area in Switzerland that was about to be bombarded with a killer virus kind of thing. And he was pushing this Swiss guy in terms of, well, what do you say, and what should we be careful of now, and what would she look out for? What should we look out for now that they've got out and everything else, and blah blah blah. And the Swiss guy, anyway, basically he calmed him down and he said, look, we have ski slopes. We're an outdoor tourist attraction. It's probably the best place to be is outdoors. We're not in confined spaces. We're not in ice rinks. We're not in indoor skiing centres or swimming pools or anything like that. So if anything, probably the healthiest place to be would be in a skiing resort somewhere in Switzerland. Basically, you shut the BBC guy up, but in a very nice way. And that was the end of the conversation. So I thought, good on you, mate, for talking a bit of sense. Because it's got to a point now where it's just got ridiculous. I mean, I had to post something again today. I didn't have to, but I feel the need to now regularly, just keep putting stuff out there all the time. Where I started it with, if they don't stop, neither will I, or something worse, paraphrasing myself there, But again, I put the daily rates on in terms of infections and deaths, and just highlighting this very, very important point that the deaths that are counted in terms of COVID-19 are all deaths for those who have tested positive in the last 28 days of COVID-19, not for those who have died of COVID. Right? Big difference. And it's there in black and white. And we understand that, the people I'm mainly talking to here. But why aren't that lot getting it out there? What is it they're not wanting to understand or see about that? And that's the frustrating bit. So, there you go. First time I've worn these reading glasses for this length of time, I've got to say. But I have. Bit Buddy Holly-esque, really, aren't they? Yeah, anyway. So, on that ski resort bombshell, that Colditz-esque Great Escape bombshell that the Brits managed to get out of a quarantine-threatened environment in Switzerland, I will call it a day with my friend here, who I've had now for many, many years. It's an original, absolutely. GLM is all I say. I'll leave that to you to work that one out. Anyway, so on that note, thank you all for joining me, and thank you to everybody who supports my channel. I'm still a bit of a novice at all of this. I've said this before. I'm getting used to the idea of doing my own content. I'm normally the person not behind the camera, but talking and interacting as I was doing in the Globe Light tour and that sort of stuff. But I'm trying to get more used to doing this and combining the two really, and getting properly into content creation, and hopefully also doing some tidy sound videos. So I'll be asking for some of your help on that in the future as well. Maybe understanding what the best gear is to get, not necessarily hardware, but certainly, you know, editing tools or whatever, to be able to come up with some good ideas. Because obviously I feel the need to do that as well, because there's no way I'm going to shut up about this, ever. Okie dokie. Well, anyway, thanks for joining me. I might do another video before the year is out, just to have a very, very brief sort of reflection on my time in the world of street demonstrations and that sort of thing, because I've only been doing that actively with you guys, for example, now since August. But I have been active in other areas. I was doing that last year, like I said, with the Globe Light Tour in Europe. But I'd like to sort of reflect on this and kind of, you know, understand where I'm going to go with it and what I can maybe offer moving forward. So I'll probably do that before the year is up and put something else out. And also have a little reflectory look at the year that was nonsense, non plus ultra. 2020, eh? What can you say? Anyway, to all of you, a good night. It's good night from him and good night from me. Good night.